Hiya guys, welcome along, welcome back to the channel. Part 8 now of this beginner's guide, and basically what we're going to look at today is how, well, it's not a beginner's guide, it's about if you're a complete and utter beginner, a couple of the earlier videos are going to help you a lot, but what the whole idea of me doing these videos is so you can take your modelling that step further. So you can, you know, if you've got a few kits behind you and you've painted them and they all look brand new and everything, and you want to weather them up a bit, we'll look at stuff like that and some different techniques for doing stuff. And that's what it's all about. It's about going from the basics. A lot of you have been asking questions via the comments, which is great. I've been writing all those questions down, and I will come back to those and I will sort them out. But as you know, at the moment I'm building this Scammell Commander with the trailer, the tank transporter, and as I come to certain parts in this kit, I'm doing certain things with it, so and including them as part of this series. Now, I was going to do some soldering on photo etch yesterday, but unfortunately that didn't happen because the parts were awful. Watch part 6 of the Scammell build and you'll see what I mean when it comes up. So I've got to the point now where I'm doing the exhausts. So here are the exhaust pipes that lead from the engine bay up into the silencers, and then here we have the silencers themselves. Now this could be done on anything. I also, in the video, I don't know if you can see on the end there, but I also showed in part 5 how I open up these exhausts and make them look a lot more realistic. So the object here is to make these look rusty. Now there's lots of different products on the market that you can use, and there's lots of different ways of going about this. The first one you'll see are these washes. You get an old rust oil wash. So you could basically paint these brown, put the wash on, blotch it all around, and you know, things would look great. I've also got a black brown oil wash here I'm going to use. These are the Modeller's World oil washes, which I really enjoy using, and they again come from Premium Hobbies. A lot of the stuff I use on here, well, pretty much everything I use is available from Premium Hobbies down in Weston-super-Mare. If you're in the UK, they ship. They don't ship anywhere else in the world, unfortunately. And if you do use them, use the code NMB10, Nigel's Modelling Bench 10, and you will get 10% off your order. There's also some pigment here, which is basically like a powder that you rub onto the paint and stuff, and you can fix that in place with different bits and pieces, but we'll cover all of that and I'll use all of it to make these exhausts look rusty. Now, one thing that is unusual with these, now normally if you're doing a rusty exhaust it would be underneath a van or a truck or a car or something, and the whole thing would all be rusty. From the pictures I've seen of these Scammells, when they seem to be sort of, like, I'm guessing they get repaired and looked after and stuff, but it seems like the lower third of the silencer remains green. Obviously when they're brand new they're painted green the same as the rest of the truck, but then slowly but surely that paint will burn off because of the heat, and basically you will end up with the paint getting all burnt off. But for some reason it's like the lower third of the exhausts seem to be kind of green, and I'll show you some pictures for those that are interested in this subject. I'll show you some pictures. You can't see anything in that one there. They've got grills around them, so it's difficult to see. It's much easier to see in the colour photographs. Here you can see one here. Now this is pretty much completely rusty, but the lower section of it is still this sort of brown colour, which is like a sort of stained paint. Here you can see there's a tan one, and the upper part of the exhaust is all burnt, but the rest of it is tan. There's some great pictures here. Look at that beauty there. I love those things. M911. I should have got myself planned for this, shouldn't I? Sorry, but I didn't. But you can definitely see in here. There we go. There's one there. You can see the bottom of that exhaust is still green, and the top of it is all brown. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to try and replicate here. So, as I say, you can get all these different products like rust colours and pigments and all that, but I want to actually give it some texture. Now you can use liquid poly to get your texture, and I don't have anything to show you that with, but basically what you do is get liquid poly and stipple it on. The only trouble with that is if you go too far there's no coming back. So, and if you start to lose detail, you can't come back. So what I generally do is use Mr. Surfacer. Now this is Mr. Surfacer 1000 and it's mahogany. The only reason I'm using mahogany is basically because it's brown, which is a great colour to get as a undercoat for rust. And the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this nice grey mat, because I will ruin it with this Mr. Surfacer. And really I should, no, I'm not going to do that. I've got other mats I could use, but it doesn't matter if this one's getting towards the end of its life anyway. So what I'm going to do is, with a fairly large brush, I'm just going to, we'll see on the exhaust pipes first, because it's going to be the easiest way to do it. So what I'm going to do, I'll do it down on this end first, because it doesn't matter if it messes up. So all I'm going to do is get some Mr. Surfacer and just brush it on quite liberally with an old brush like this. You don't want to use any nice brushes, you want a really old, knackered out old brush. Just brush it on here like so, and this is all going to be in the engine compartment underneath the sealed hood, so you're not going to see any of it anyway. There we go. So there you can see what I'm doing here. I'm stippling it on. Let me bring you in a bit. Let me just zoom you in a bit so you can see better what I'm doing. So just stippling it on, and we're getting this kind of rough finish, and you'll see it all close up. If I think of it, I might put some photographs up at the end of the work that we've done. So it's good to do a bit that's inconspicuous to get a judge of how long it's taking to dry and stuff. It's very warm today. It's about 28 degrees, about 26 degrees, so it's nice to get a feel for how it's going to go. So I know, if the trouble is, if you go and paint too much on it once, you will end up not being able to stipple it. And as you can see, this is literally practically instant. I'm able to stipple it. So there we go. So that's all I'm going to do there on those pipes, is stipple it. And don't go too mad, you don't want too rough a finish. As I say, the beauty of doing this, if you go too far, if it's too thick and it's all dried out, however, get some Mr. Colour Leveling thinners or some IPA or something on a cotton bud and just remove it. Just take it off. But and you can see that I've painted these pipes black first of all. You don't need to do that, you can do this straight on the bare plastic. The only reason I painted them black is because I did. There's no other reason than the fact that I did. So on here I'm going to take this pole out and I'm going to do on the top around here. Make sure we don't go inside, because we don't want the inside of the pipe to be rusty. You can see on there, I'm hoping the camera's staying focused on this. And now you can see why you don't use a nice brush either. I'm going to try and stay out of those recesses, because in those recesses is where the next silencer mounts on. But if it doesn't matter if we do actually get some in there, because we can always just scrape it out. And obviously remember, it's 35th scale, we don't want it too rough. And we also don't want it to be too even. And I don't want to get those brackets too much, because they wouldn't have rusted up very much either. There we go. It's easy as that. And we just stipple this on, and it gives us this rusty, this sort of, come on camera, you get this kind of rough textured finish on there, yeah? And down here I'm going to basically fade it out, because what I'm going to do there is paint the bottom of the exhaust green and then use the rust effects over the green and sort of fade it down in. Just remember, there will be bits that are kind of got the green paint still there, but they won't be rough because you won't have the green paint. Although you would have some rusting going under the paint, and the paint would start to flake, wouldn't it, I guess? So I guess we can do that. I don't know, that is there. I think that's where I've rubbed it and it's taken the Mr. Surfacer off underneath. So that's the tan plastic coming through. That's not a problem. As I say, you don't need to prime this, I just did. Because I paint bloody everything black, don't I? So I'll get the rest of this done. You don't want to watch me do all this, do you? And then I'll I'll come back and we'll have a look when it's all done. Okay, so they're all done, and as you can see we've got the stippled effect on there and sort of nice rough bottom edge on it, and we can just get the green paint on there afterwards. While we're on the subject of Mr. Surfacer, I just want to show you something. I'm going to do a whole video about it. I've done a video back years ago. I'll do another one in this series about Mr. Surfacer because it has so many uses. But I just want to show you quickly something while we're here. If you shake your bottles of Mr. Surfacer, it gets all up in the lid, and then when you take the lid off it all runs down and the lid sticks on, and you also get all this build up around here, you can see, and a lot of people scrape that off and throw it away. You don't need to. You can take a knife, okay, take your modelling knife and go around and scrape it off and let it go into the jar, because what will happen, it will dissolve into the existing Mr. Surfacer, and it saves you making a mess and it saves you wasting any. So you can just put that into your jar. Was I off camera then? I'm sorry, I think I was, wasn't I? Let me come back out again. All I did there, if I was off camera, all I did there was just went around the edge and just scraped the paint off and let it go into the jar, and you can see there it's sitting in the jar there, the scraping sitting in the bottom. The other thing is, if you have brushes that you use for Mr. Surfacer, like I do, and you can see here's one, this has got grey in it, you can see I don't even clean them, because I've got a brush, you can see this brush here is all hard and everything. If I put it in the Mr. Surfacer and rub the brush around the side of the jar, it's back to being soft and usable again. The other thing you'll notice is, especially on warm days like today, if you've got your jar of Mr. Surfacer, it'll start to form a skin really quickly. Okay, I'm just going to talk here for a minute or so and then we'll see it start to form a skin. Again, don't worry about it, just let it form a skin, break the skin away, you don't need to take it out. It's not like when you're using gloss paint in your house and if you let the skin go in the paint, you end up with all these lumps and everything in the paint. I'm sure you've seen it before. Not with Mr. Surfacer, okay? You need to be careful with those sorts of paints. With Mr. Surfacer, anything that's dry, anything that's all scabby, crabby around the edge, just let it go back in. Let's see if this, there you go, this is starting to form a skin already, so you can see how quick it forms a skin. And you can see there, if I put this brush in, you can see it's formed a skin, it's not taking the paint out. All you do is just break the skin up, stir it in, and it will soon dissolve. Same with the paint on the sides here, you can get that off and get that back down in the jar. Anything that's in there, you don't need to waste any. As I say, at the end of the job, I just clean the brush off in a cloth, just let it dry, because it doesn't matter. As soon as you put another brush in, that'll be it sorted. So what we need to do now, we've got these exhausts here done, and we need to actually just have a quick check, make sure they're all okay, they're all nice and stippled, nothing's overdone, and it's all looking good. So what we're going to do now, we can decide what sort of rust we're going to have. Now there's some rusts which are like a very light brown, some rusts are very red, and I think it all depends on where it is, what the atmosphere is like, when it was last used. I mean, obviously if this truck was used every single day, then the rust would be a lighter colour than if it's been used and parked up on a wet Saturday and Sunday, and then the rust would all revitalise, it would all become bright red, especially when it's wet. So, you know, or a red-brown colour. So you have to decide, and sometimes certain areas of rust, if you look around, certain areas of rust can be like a tan colour as well. So you can get all sorts of different colours going on in there, and just sort of fill your boots really. And you can just experiment and play and do whatever. You can use watercolours if you want to, because then you can experiment and play. You can go straight into using your pigments. So for example here, I can go straight into using my pigments, and I can use this brush that we had Mr. Surfacer in, and I'm going to do it over the lid because it's so messy. I can brush this on here, and as you can see, straight away, because what I'm doing, I'm brushing it onto the Mr. Surfacer, which has that textured finish. So as you can see, we're getting like a blotchy look, which is very much correct. for what we're looking for. And as you can see, we've got a variation in lights and darks and all sorts going on. Okay. And because this brush is all hard with Mr. Surfacer and stuff, it's actually giving us that nice uneven effect as well. Get the top of the pipe here. And the top of the pipe in the pictures I've seen seems to be a lot darker than the rest of the exhaust. I guess the pipe is what gets the hottest, because inside you've got the tubes where it's pushing the gases all up and down, isn't it, backwards and forwards to silence it. So I'm guessing that the pipe is going to be the hottest because that's where it's directly coming out. So we can add some black to this if we want to. As you can see, we can brush that on, and now you can see we've got what looks like a very rusty exhaust. So you could leave that there if you wanted to. Just, that's it, done, job done. Or you could carry on with some oils. So what we can do here is get some oil wash, and what I'll do is get a Tamiya pot, turn it upside down, get some of this rust coloured oil wash in there. We don't need too much of it. And then I'm going to use a brush. Now, never ever use the same brushes with oils as you use with your acrylic paints, because you'd never the twain shall meet. You don't want them to be crossing over. And with this, I'm just going to blotch it on in areas and let it do its thing. Okay, and that will, you see that spread out, and it will kind of dry out and give that really uneven look. Now, if you just go on to the Mr. Surfacer with oil, I'll do it on this pipe because I don't want to get it on there, you'll see that it doesn't really do very much. But if we give it a few minutes to dry, you'll see the kind of effect you can get if you just use Mr. Surfacer and oil. So we'll leave that for a minute to dry, and then I'll come back and we'll see what it looks like when it has dried. Okay, so as we can see now, that oil wash is dried, so we've got this blotchy, rusty look. On here, you can see the oil wash really does nothing much at all. So the oil wash on its own is not a lot of good. What we can do, if you really want to have a play, is don't do what I just did and put this brush in the pigment. What you can do is use some of your oil wash. So wet the area and then use your pigment and use the oil as like an adhesive, if you like, for the pigment. The only trouble with this is the pigment will soak into the oil, and you'll get like a very, when it dries, it gets a very even, it just looks that colour, and you'll see that now. But it does work quite well if you're looking for that sort of, you know, if you're doing an abandoned tank or something and it's got the exposed exhaust on the back, they will absolutely rust like that. They'll just go red. They have no other colour to them. They just rust. So, you know, if you're trying to depict rust that's been around for a long time, like on old railway tracks or something like that, aircraft exhaust tend not to rust. Like Spitfires and stuff, the exhausts are made of Inconel and they don't rust. So bear that in mind. I keep seeing people do their Spitfires with rusty exhaust. That's not correct. There we go, we put some more pigment on there, just pigment on its own, on top of what was already there. You can see the red colour is becoming more and more pronounced. This is all the oils are dry and everything. But the whole object of the exercise, what you don't want to do, I said I'm telling you what to do, I'm showing you how I do it. What I don't want to achieve here is just a blatant red mess. Otherwise I could just spray it red oxide, couldn't I? I want it to be all blotchy and uneven, and also it needs to be dead matte. You can't have any sheen at all. So, you know, you don't want to be going over this and sealing it in with a, you know, like an LP23, is it, Tamiya matte varnish, because it's got a sheen to it. This would be absolutely dead flat. Okay, so you can see there, and we've got a nice bit of variation between the two as well. They're a little bit different. Okay. So there's that. Now if you want to darken things up a little bit, we'll get another Tamiya pot and we can get our black brown wash. Again, we can put a drop of that in there. Don't need too much. And then with our black brown wash we can just put some on in a few places, let it sort itself out, and that will... I'll leave that one so you can see the difference afterwards. I'll do it on here as well. Just to get this, I need to leave that one. So we'll have those two to compare. And the best thing about all this, everything I'm using here, the washes, the pigment, even the Mr. Surfacer, cotton bud, IPA, all gone. Back to plastic. You can start again. And that's the beauty of doing it this way. As I say, I've shown in videos before and I'll show again how to achieve rust looks, cast textures and all that using Tamiya Extra Thin and brushing it on and melting the plastic. The trouble is it's irreversible. If you go too far, you've had it. So there we go. In fact, what I'll do is I'll find a scrap part and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so I've got a scrap piece of tank or something here. So you just get some extra thin. You can see here this plastic is smooth and got a sheen to it. So I can brush the extra thin on. Okay, and then just stipple it. And if you want to get like a cast finish, you want it nice and wet. You want a well ventilated area. Easy for you to say. I've got the fan blowing across me and I've got the window open to my right, so I'm okay here. And then you can stipple that, and if you just leave it like that, you can get like a cast texture. I chose the wrong colour plastic, didn't I? That should give you like a cast texture on there. I'll move the light, maybe I can form a shadow or something. There you go. You can see that's like a cast texture on there. If you keep going, wet it again, and you stipple it, and you keep stippling until it's dry and you can't stipple it anymore, you can get a nice rough finish. And you can even use your fingers, pigments coming off my fingers, and you can get a rough textured finish like that. But as I say, the trouble is there's no going back. Once you've done it, that's it. Like I can rub that there, I can ruin the surface and roll it all up, I can rub it with my fingernails and that, but there's no going back. I've destroyed it. So that's the beauty of using the Mr. Surfacer instead. But as I say, I'll cover that in another video. Now here you can see what's happened. That oil has formed a puddle and it looks a bit of a mess, and I'm glad that's happened. What we can do now, don't rub it, roll a cotton bud over it. Okay, I'm pressing quite hard, I'm just rolling a cotton bud over, and what that will do is settle that in, and as you can see, we will start to get very dark areas in our rust, which is just what we want. Okay, how's that? Do you like that? And then if you want to, you can add some more pigment. So you can see now the difference in those two straight away. You can see the difference. Ignore the sheen, that's going to get overcoated with matte varnish. You can see the difference now in those two, and I think this one looks a lot more realistic. Just want to go over that top as well. If you want to get some more red on it, come back to your pigment. Put a bit more on there, nothing much, just to keep the darkness there. As I say, that upper exhaust pipe seems to be darker than the muffler or the silencer, so there we go. So there you are. Okay, so you can see now the difference in those two. This one's got the dark blotchy areas in it. That one hasn't. So I'm going to go and do the same now with the exhaust. I've got the oils on there, so we can roll them out. If you rub it, all you'll do is rub everything off. If you rub it, all you'll do is just rub everything off, and you'll end up with like a brown Mr. Surfacer again. So try and avoid rubbing it, because I've just taken everything off of there. Alright, so I'll get some more work done just like I've just done, and then I'll come back when it's all dry and I can show you what I'm going to do next. Okay, now this is something I've actually never tried before, but as I said, sometimes in rust you get lighter areas, especially when it's in use. What I'm going to do is just see if I could just tap this in areas. I'm not going to do the pipe, I'm just going to do the silencer. I'm not sure if this is going to achieve the desired effect. In fact, I'll only do one, because if it doesn't work I've got to start again. But you do sometimes see these lighter areas. I'm sure you'll know what I mean if you look at things. But, you'll find yourself, when you get into modelling, when you get deeper and deeper into it, you'll find yourself looking at stuff. The other day I can't remember where I was now, but there was a van, a really dirty, well-used van, and I was kind of looking at the wheels and the tyres and seeing how the dirt was changed from the, like, near the tread up to the wheel, and then the wheel went from sort of a silver into just a grey mess because of all the road dirt and everything and brake dust. And yeah, it was quite interesting. And you need to be photographing things like that, really, but you might get some strange looks if you go around photographing van wheels. But, I'm just going to manipulate that so we don't get those tide marks again. I don't think that's done anything. I think it's too thin to show up on the dark. But, there we go. What we could try here is some of the dark brown wash. I'm going to see if I can get a little tiny drop to this area here to highlight that clamp. So as you can see, guys, I'm doing these videos, this is how I do it, and sometimes I'm doing stuff that I've never actually done before. So, I've done all this before, but I've never actually messed around with oils and trying to get that lighter colour and everything in the blotchiness. You can see now where it's dried out, it's left those sort of tide marks on there which don't look right at all, so I think I'm going to have to pretty much start again there. Or just leave it like that. I think we'll get a bit more pigment on there. There we go. Job done. So I'm happy with that. You can see the exhaust pipes, how they look. A bit too much on there, that's a little bit too red for my liking. You can see we got the texture of the Mr. Surfacer, we got the colour of the Mr. Surfacer, and then we got the pigments and the oils giving us the effect we want. In fact, what I'm going to do is come in here and go around those bits with the dark oil, and I'm also going to go around those bits there with the dark oil. I think I might see what happens if I put it on here as well. You would hope that would chase around, wouldn't you? Because that is the expansion joint or the flexi joint, and they tend not to rust as much as the rest of the pipe. Cotton bud, remove the excess. See how wet it is by the wet patch it left behind. go. So yeah, all looking good. Right, so that is basically that. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to seal it with a clear varnish, and the varnish I recommend is this one. This is the flattest, mattest varnish I know of, Ultra Matte from AK183. You just decant it directly into the airbrush and spray it. It's fantastic stuff, and it's dead flat. In fact, I'm going to do it now, live on camera for you. Remove all this stuff out of the way. Look at the mess I've made on my bench. So put the airbrush here. Got the varnish, give it a really good shake. You wait till you see how flat this is. It's absolutely wonderful stuff. Straight into the airbrush, and then we're just going to paint it on. There we go. I think my airbrush has got a blockage or something. As long as we can get some down, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be perfect because it's a rusty old exhaust. I'm just going to get some air on there just to dry it back quicker, and you will see how flat this goes. It's absolutely incredible stuff. It is the flattest flat I've ever seen. I've got so much on there it's flooded, look. If I can get some of that off with a cotton bud. I think my airbrush has got a big problem. It must have a piece of debris in it or something blocking the nozzle. There you go, you can see how matte that is, look. That is so flat. And there we are. So you can see now that exhaust is nicely rusted. And if we want to play with it some more, just carry on. Just keep putting the pigments on. You can put some paint on there if you want to. Washes, whatever you want to do. Just fill your boots. There we go, it's spraying better now, look. There must have been something in there that I blew through. But as I say, I have yet to find another product that's as flat as this. This is just, I'm not sure if I did the top of this. Yes, I did. This is the flattest flat I've ever known. The only problem with it is not very hard wearing. So that's going to need some more pigment on there. We can make this pipe. Seal it all in, and that will lock down, and it will grab all those pigments and it will get them stuck down for you. So there we are. So there's our rusty exhausts. As you can see there, we've got the texture, we've got the colour, and then we've got our rusty silencers here. So I've got to paint the bottom of those green now. That's not part of the getting the rust effects tutorial sort of thing. It's not a tutorial, it's how I do it. So there we go. And as I say, if you don't have to stop there. If you want to get some more pigments down, get some more pigments down. Just put them on. Get some more down, brush it around, move it all about, do whatever you want. There is no hard and fast rule to anything. You can see there I've just made a mark on it, so I can come along with this and just brush that around, soften it up. And there we go. Put some oils on there, give it a rub with the cotton bud, get some of that pigment off. Spray some more matte on there, just like so. Easy, innit? So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. So the products I used there were the Modeller's World Rust pigments. Now there's lots of pigments you can get from all sorts of different companies. Now the only thing I will say, you can get the flory ones, which I've got here and I use, but the flory ones tend to be a lot coarser than these. So I tend to not use them for stuff like this. You could use the flory ones more for dioramas and stuff, but the flory ones tend to be a little bit more coarse than these, and that's no knock or anything. You can rub the sample on there, so you can see here, you know, that we've got this nice rust effect from that pigment. You can get the MIG pigments, which I've got, which are absolutely brilliant. There's all sorts of different pigments out there. They're all pretty much the same. You've got the MIG Ammo ones as well. I'm not sure what they're like. I think I have actually used, was that MIG Ammo or AK? Wash, wash, wash. Yeah, they're MIG Ammo. I got them from Premium Hobbies. So you can get the MIG Ammo ones as well, and they're absolutely fine. The washes I've got are the Modeller's World ones, and I've used the Old Rust, the black brown, and then I tried the light brown, which I don't really think did much at all, so don't worry about using that one. And then I started off with Mr. Surfacer Mahogany 1000. If you don't have the brown, don't worry about it, just use the black or the grey and then spray it brown. Spray it red, brown, spray it whatever colour you want. You can see now where that clear has dried, you've got this lovely proper looking matte rust. And you can see the rust, the stippling effect, you can see the pigments, you can see the oils, you can see it all there, and it's all adding to the effect of a nice rusty exhaust. So there we go. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys, and as I say, don't forget, don't ever use a brush in oils that you use in your acrylics and vice versa. Old brushes like this, don't use nice new brushes for pigments and stuff, use knackered out old ones. The ones you get in the Airfix starter sets and that, when they start to wear out, they're great for stuff like this. Or just buy yourself some real cheap rubbish brushes, don't use nice ones. And then there's just one final little bit to show you. Yes, I am editing this in because I ended the video and forgot to show you this. So I've edited in and we'll do another goodbye. You won't have seen the first goodbye. So if you look at this and to you all looks a little bit too brown, maybe you want to brighten it up a little bit, get some of this Tamiya clear orange. You can use the LP or the X26 clear orange. Get it in your airbrush, very, very thin, okay? And as I say, I'm assuming everybody's got an airbrush. I know a lot of beginners won't have one, but you really do need to get yourself an airbrush if you're going to take your modelling that step further, because there's so many uses for it. You know, you can get stuff like this. You can't really brush this on over pigments. You know, you can't get a nice flat finish with a brush if you want to paint a car body. Yes, some people can, I know. There are lots of people that can with enamels and stuff like that. But if you really want to get some nice finishes on your models and stuff and get some special effects going, you need to get yourself an airbrush. I'm going to do airbrush basics. But we've got this very, very heavily thinned. Okay, it's about 80% thinners. And what we can do on here, I'm just going to check my flow. You can see on here, if you look at this paper towels, but I've been using it for resin. You can see how thin it is. It hardly changes the colour. So it's very, very thin. And you can just spray some clear orange on there, and you can make your rust come to life if you want to. So you can possibly see that. When I dry it out, I think it's still a bit dark. But I don't know if you can see the difference there. It kind of evens it all up, if you like. So just get some clear orange on there and you can brighten it all up a bit if you want to. Especially if you end up, if your rust is looking, if you think it looks too brown, you know, if it's looking more like a dirty drain pipe than a rusty pipe, then get some flat orange, some clear orange on there, and it will really, really bring it out. And you could also use that to seal it in, but once again you're going to need a matte varnish, because remember, rust has no sheen whatsoever. And as I say, this is all about taking it one step further. If you want to go really back to basics and achieving rust, what you can do is paint it brown and then dry brush it with some red brown. But this was all about, you know, how to achieve rusty effects rather than making rust with, you know, with dry brushing and paints and stuff. This is actually achieving the texture, the unevenness and the colours and everything. So there we go. And as I say, you can carry on, you can go as far as you like with this. When these two are put together, you can see they're going to look really nice. Okay, and if anything, I think because I've done with that orange, maybe I'll let it dry, but I think I need a bit more pigment on there now to get a bit more of a red colour back. I think they're a little bit too dark. But as I say, you could just keep going, just keep doing what you want. So thank you for watching. I'll see you all soon. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit subscribe. It helps a lot. And I'll see you all soon for part 9, whatever that may be, because I don't know. I have no plan whatsoever. I have lists of videos that you want, and it's all going to be coming. So don't you worry about that. So I'll see you soon. I will be doing one very shortly on airbrush basics. I know that's something a lot of you have been asking about different pressures, different mixes, different paints, this, that and the other. So we'll cover that. That'll probably be quite a long one actually, because there's going to be a lot to cover. The only problem with doing stuff like that is there are 1,000,001 ways to skin a cat. And a lot of people will disagree with the way I do things because they do it differently, and that is one of the problems with airbrushing. You'll have a lot of people say, you can't do that, you mustn't do that. Well, I've been doing it for years, and my last one of these I've just replaced, my Revolution BR. This is a new one. My last one I had for I think 11 or 12 years, 11 definitely, and never replaced a single part in it. And this one, I got it, and as soon as I got it I bent the needle. So this is an 11-year-old needle in this one. So there we go. So you've got to be careful. What I did, I think, you see these airbrush holders, if you bang the end of your airbrush onto there, you bend your needle. So you have been warned. Right, thank you for watching. I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.